All right. Hey, Steve.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for taking your time on a busy evening to speak with me today.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, I've got nothing better to do for the next 20 minutes anyway, or 30 minutes,
All right. Well, spend it with me.
except eat dinner.
Before, before we get into this series, right? It's called the Coach
Yep.
Conversation Series. I've been having this at least once or twice a week with our coaches on our team. And today's quite special because if, if you don't know already, meaning the coaches, you've been with us for about close to a year and a half,
Okay.
right? Isn't that right? A year and a half?
I don't actually remember, but that's about right, roughly, I think.
That's what I remember too. And your time here with us, your performance has been absolutely the highest. And performance meaning clients that are renewing with you consistently, clients that are referring their colleagues to us based on their positive experience with you. It's the highest. And so I wanted to share with our team of coaches what you're doing, really, and have you share us the insight, tactics, strategies. But that call could take, days. I mean, there's just so much insight. And I
Okay.
wanted to focus on a few topics. And the topic would be how, sorry, before I even introduce the topic, we had dinner, you, me, and a client a couple of days ago. And that dinner was to really celebrate the 100 sessions that you guys completed together. And that's a milestone that I like to celebrate. And when that happens, I take them out for steak dinner, and that's what we did.
Sure.
Um, I would like for you to share with their team of coaches what it takes really to build a relationship out of thin air, right? It's from cold, right? And then go on for 100 classes and beyond, right? I don't think your client's gonna stop anytime soon. It's gonna keep on going. So my first question to you, Steve, would be, what are you doing to create these long lasting relationships and to reach 100 sessions? I mean, it's not only with her, but you've got a few other students that are reaching that 100 session mark, right?
Yep. Two others.
What are
Yep.
two others. So what are you doing? What's happening?
To be honest with you, I really sucked at it. So this is not something that I was very good at from the beginning. It's not an inborn talent, to be completely honest. I had a pretty short fuse, so I would sometimes, get upset about something and I wouldn't really respond well. And over the years, I mean, some of it's really due to experience, and you need to sort of keep an even keel no matter what happens. You need to kind of have a balanced, cool head. So even if the clients blow you off, even if they give you a hard time, even if they don't really listen to or respond to what you really need them to do, you can never react in any way to what they're doing. You just have to kind of roll with it and find a path what the customer and yourself really want to find a common path some way. Now that could be like they want to completely go off script and they want to just talk about whatever they want to talk about. But in that case, you need to be read up on what they want to talk about. You can't just randomly talk about something. So actually, for example, to give you a very simple example, I have an engineer or two engineers from Samsung, and all they talk about is semiconductors. Now, I know absolutely zero about semiconductors, to be absolutely frank with you. But I actually, after the first two or three conversations, I spent several days reading up on semiconductor business and where it's headed, what it's doing, what are the big issues, what are the key competitors in the market. So I actually had to study. So, one of the key things about coaching is not about, preparing materials beforehand perfectly, because sometimes they're not going to read the materials. Sometimes they might not be interested in the material that you chose from them, right? And I recognized that over the first 6 months, I think, when I was with your program, I said, hey, I made a few mistakes. I think I should have done this. I should have done that. I'm not, by no means at all, am I perfect. But the point is that I was willing to change my system up a little bit to see if I can adapt make it more efficient, make it more, customizable to the specific client. But I guess the first part is you have to study what they're interested in. Simple as that, number one. So whatever they're interested, you need to know what the heck you're talking about. So essentially, you need to do some studying, whether it's a few days, whether it's a couple weeks, whatever. Because if you're not knowledgeable what they're talking about, then number one, you're not going to be interested. Number two, you're not going to be responding to whatever they're talking about because you don't understand it. And number three, you can't prepare materials that are customizable to what they're interested in the first place if you know nothing about it. So that's basically number one. The second part I've been experimenting with is what a modular program. What that means is instead of throwing them one article or one video per week, I've been actually designing a kind of like a modular program where I have 5 different materials that I prepare. And I call it day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. And I say, look, even if you don't discuss this with me, you can use it for a self-study program for yourself, 10 to 15 minutes a day, because they're kind of like short. They're not really long articles or long videos. But there are 5 different subjects. So there'll be a variety of subjects. One could be sports. One could be, something about the future. One could be kind of like a factoid from Encyclopedia Britannica. I just select 5 different things, and they're free to choose, or they can do all of them. They can do some of them, or they can do one of them. It doesn't really matter. And then I have scripts that are, accompanying those particular 5 things. And then I create a comprehensive vocabulary or a phrase list, if you want to call it, of things that are interesting or things that are repetitive that they can use in their own daily conversations. And I can go over that with them, or if they can study themselves. So essentially, it's a self-study modular program, but it's something that we can discuss during class, or if they decide to go off script, I've already done the studying on the project that they're interested in, so we can do both. So those are the 2 main, I guess, ways. Obviously, there's a lot of tactical elements depending on the person that I'm talking to, but in a strategic level, I would say those are the 2 key learnings that I found with your program. Because in the beginning, I wasn't doing that. In the beginning, I was strictly following a Harvard Business Review regimen, or I was following strictly a one video or something like that. Basically, I chose the material for that specific person, and that was it. It wasn't like they had a choice, right? But I recognized very quickly that people aren't like that, and you can't, as a coach, let's say you have realistically, let's say you have like 10, 12 students, right? To prepare a customizable program for each person, it's a lot of work, It's actually quite a bit. So with this modular approach, I give each student the 5 choices, right? And they all choose something different anyway, but at least you've read through the 5 things and you know what you're talking about, so that you can kind of switch back and forth based on the person you're talking to if they decide to choose a specific thing that they're talking about. And on top of that, if they do decide to go off script, that's a different thing. That's more about your personal relationship with them and how much you've studied on the subject that they're interested in. So in a way, I'm covering kind of both bases on a strategic level. Now, to say that this is easy, I wouldn't say it's easy. It's just something that I've developed into an efficient system now. I started it probably about 4 months ago, and it's actually working out pretty good. They like the volume of materials that's coming through. They select what they want to look at. So if they don't like any of the stuff they see, they want to do something else, they tell me, right? So it doesn't matter. I just say, hey, look, you want to leave your comfort zone? Let's try a whole bunch of different stuff. I get a lot of stuff in there. If there's nothing that you like, just let me know and we'll find something else.
That's interesting.
Maybe you want to ask, sorry, I'm talking too much, but go ahead, ask another question.
No, this is good. I just wanted to just ask you a question regarding these modulars or these daily selections that you have for your clients. First of all, how are you selecting them? Is that based off of what you know on the client in terms of their interest areas and,
essentially, I try to choose the most up-to-date current kind of like trends or event related news. So essentially, it could be like a TED video that they uploaded like, I don't know, 2 days ago. And I usually select it on the Thursdays or the Friday before the week begins. So I'm sending all the materials to them probably on a Saturday.
How? Email or Google Drive?
I've tried Google Drive. People, for some reason, they don't tell me if they don't have access to it. So I've actually gone back to the old method of doing WeTransfer, just sending the files directly to their email.
Okay.
Because unfortunately, even if I do that, sometimes they forget to download it. So that's the best way to, confirm it. Otherwise, if I just say Google Drive, I don't know if they've entered Google Drive or if they've downloaded from Google Drive. It doesn't tell you that. But with WeTransfer, I know if they've downloaded or if they haven't downloaded at least. Right.
Okay.
Um,
So, yeah, I mean that's very good. You're really hitting 2 points here. One is that you're doing the homework and you're doing the research into their area, which is going to be their function or their position, and I completely agree with you on that. Right? Clients will know right off the bat, is that person knowledgeable in my field? If so, it gives them the confidence, right?
yeah.
If not, does that person have the interest and passion to learn about my thing so that in the future we can have discussions on this? They're always going to give you the leeway because they've been in their field for 10 plus 20 plus years. So whoever they're not going to expect that you're going to be more knowledgeable in their area than they are. However, if you show interest, if you show progress, and if you show again, just interest, that goes a long way. And I think that's what, in summary, that's what you're doing with your new clients, right?
Yeah, I mean, some people it's easier because I already have a background in that specific field. Some people's it's completely, out of the world. Like for example, like let's say take a company like Boston Scientific, which is medical devices, which I'm not really that familiar with. I have to actually know what I'm talking about. So I have to look it up. I have one guy talking about joint replacements. I mean, do you know anything about joint replacements? I have to actually do some reading. So the point is that you have to take an interest in what they're interested in because they don't really want to talk about too many other things besides that. And that's what they're talking about in English anyway, every day with their particular regional counterparts.
You know what's 100% agreed. What I've learned from your clients, because I do my check-ins and I meet with them.
Yeah.
We've had a few dinners together. It's that you're doing much more than just English training. It becomes almost like a business consultancy. And that, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is that evolution of a coach where you're positioned to teach them English and help them with their fluency. By the end, it becomes much more, right? The scope gets bigger. It goes deeper in terms of the type of work that you're doing. So for a few instances, you're doing like a business consultancy. Isn't that right?
Yeah, in some ways. But remember, there's a third element. There's, as I said, there's a lot of sub-elements that as you said, we could take a long time talking for hours about. But I guess the third element is that I try to make them feel better because usually they're stressed about something at work.
Yes.
So essentially, I offered them a very clean-cut solution to make them feel better. That, hey, don't think of it this way. It could be like this. And some of it's based on my own business experience, but also you can sort of sense it after after talking to them for a while, right? Especially if they've had classes with you for like 12, even 10 or 12 classes, you can basically feel like, hey, this person's got an issue with this person's got an issue with that. So I tell them, I basically say, hey, look, I think this is I understand where you're coming from, but have you thought about this? I've heard from a friend, or sometimes you can actually ask third parties about what they're concerned about, and they'll give you information about that particular subject, and then you could relay that information to them during the session, right? Hey, I talked to my friend yesterday about your issue, and he gave me an interesting possibility, and this is what I heard. And that's a story. Obviously, it might not solve anything, but it's an interesting story that they can listen to and learn English at the same time. At the same time, they feel more comforted by the fact that you're actually taking interest in their problem,
Exactly.
right? So it's very emotional in some ways as well.
I think that's the thing right there, isn't it? It's like, yeah, clients, they can go with you for a certain duration, but when it becomes an emotional thing, a number is just a number. They depend on you. They need you emotionally, of course, for their work, spiritually even, right? We've got a coach that I've talked to just recently, and he's not only the coach for his client, but he's like a counselor,
Yeah,
a spiritual leader, a
that's
teacher.
that's yeah, that's what's going to go a long time. One thing you do have to keep in mind is that I know that some coaches are very high energy. I used to be like the same way. This is why I understand it. We're high energy at the beginning, and then we lose our energy toward the middle range because you sort of lose interest, or you run out of steam, or you can't keep that same high energy level up. It's not sustainable for a long term. That's why you have to keep an even keel from the beginning. You can't overdo it, because if you try too hard and you try to be too excited, you have to maintain the energies throughout the entire period. And it could be like years for all you know, right? That's not really possible, not even a marriage, right? So think about what you're doing, right?
Mhm.
So you have to keep an even keel throughout. If they're emotional, you have to be kind of calm, and always kind of in control a little bit. It's difficult to do. It's easy to say, but difficult to do, which is why I say there's a lot of sub kind of elements in this kind of thing, right? But at the same time, you must not. You have to control the energy level, because if you're always excited, then it's not sustainable. You have to have a sustainable methodology. It has to be calm, rational for the most part. Yeah, you can get excited and fun sometimes, but the idea is, more or less, you have an even keel most of the time, and then you get excited and fun occasionally, right?
Would you
Rather
mind
than,
sharing a real example of how you do it? What is your method?
I mean, like, I have a lot of classes on the weekend, right? Some guys have just too busy during the week, so when they wake up early on the weekend, they're all kind of like sleepy, groggy. They're not completely awake, right? So I might start off with a bunch of jokes, have some fun with them, right? Be a little bit excited, but then I return to the even keel about maybe after 10 minutes, and they say, okay, let's get to work, kind of thing, right? So, I might say, hey, look, did you read the materials? Did you actually get a chance to read the materials? Kind of joking around, right? If you didn't, we can talk about something else. So the idea is to make them feel like they didn't wake up for no reason. Like, because you can tell, right? If they woke up and they feel like, oh crap, I had to wake up for class, kind of attitude, right? So if you can make them feel happy or a little bit excited at that point, that makes sense, because you need to get their energy level a little bit up so that you can complete the class. Otherwise, it's going to be a real slog going through a full hour of a guy that's very groggy and probably not very motivated to do the full hour anyway, right?
Sure.
So you have to get their energy up a little bit, but not too much, so that they're completely off, base and somewhere else, right?
Mhm.
So that's the balancing game, or the balancing act that you play every class that we have. In fact, even after this session, I have another class at 7:30, and I think the guy's looking forward to that because he keeps emailing me about it. But anyway, the point is that they want to have the class because they feel that they're getting something out of it. If they felt that they were getting nothing out of it, they wouldn't even bother sending me the email.
Sure.
I guess is the best way of putting it. And
Okay.
the best way they're getting something out of it, as I said before, in the strategic level, those are the two elements. But at the tactical level, there's a lot of little things you have to consider. And I can give examples here and there, but in the end, each person is slightly different. And each person has a different personality. So you have to be able to read personalities to some extent. And that's why, actually, there is one thing I guess that you can recommend. I've done a lot of reading on psychology and human behavior. So that has helped me to understand patterns in behavior a little bit. And as I said, this goes back to the first part, right? You have to study, right? I mean, there's no shortcuts around that, unfortunately. I mean, I wish there were, but there aren't.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can make a system a little bit more efficient, but in the end, if you don't know anything about it, you have to actually look it up.
Yeah.
And
I
fortunately,
think
the internet makes it a little bit easier because you can look up a lot of stuff and sort of figure out what's going on, right? And even if it's like a complicated subject, let's say like semiconductors or medical devices, you don't want to be too crazy. So I wouldn't read like a technical manual, but I would read about trends in the business. So at least you can talk in layman's terms about it, if nothing else, and they can talk about certain products that are big in the industry or so forth, right?
of course.
Why don't you tell me about your competitor and so forth? it's better to have them to do most of the talking anyway in the specialized field for the most part. One thing I've noticed with some of the people that have passed 100 classes is that they really don't need to do it anymore. It's like they've reached a point where they're picking up a few words and phrases, but they're not really getting super better. They've pretty much reached kind of a plateau. But the reason they keep doing it is, number one, they want to maintain a certain level, so they just want to keep talking to you. And number two, so long as you keep them interested with new topics or different ways of approaching the same issue, they'll continue. It's as simple as that, because there's no reason for, at some point, there's no reason for them to continue. Because in fact, I told them, I said, look, at a certain point, you're going to reach a point where there's a diminishing rate of return. No matter how much we do, we might gain like 1% or 0.5%. But if you're at 95, to get to 96 takes a lot more than if you're going from 50 to 75, right? But they don't mind. But the point is that they find it interesting to talk to me. I have something new to say in every conversation. I try to think of at least 2 or 3 new things they might not know about before the conversation begins. And then, I have a regular series of materials that I can use to fall back on if for some reason we're not getting anywhere with anything else, right? So
here's what I'm getting at. Here's what I think where you're getting at is you have to consume, right? You have to consume information, knowledge, as it pertains to your client. And with that bank of knowledge that becomes shared, it becomes like almost a utility in some cases with your client. And once they see you as that person, then of course they continue, because there's going to be always new things to talk about. Not only about conversation, but they like your company, right? They like they like seeing you on the screen and talking to you about their day, their business, their future, their past even. And that is a special place to be in, because then it doesn't really become, are you renewing again next week or are you renewing next month? It happens. And I think that is where you are with a few of your clients now, right?
I mean, it's kind of crazy. I don't even ask them about renewal. I forget about it. I occasionally forget to ask them, and then oh crap, that was our last class. After the class. So then hey, I'll see you the next. I even just say, hey, look, I'll see you next Tuesday. I know that you have to renew, and then he'll say, oh yeah, I'll remember to renew. That's it. It's almost like an afterthought. It's automatically going to happen. If you have to ask them several times, it's kind of like weird in some ways. But remember, this is not a foolproof method. I think I'm happy to share some of the modular stuff. I've already shared a couple of modular stuff with Gina, for example, but I'm happy to share some of the packages that I put together. I just put together a wide range of stuff. Sometimes it'll be all written stuff. Sometimes it'll be a mix of videos and articles. Sometimes it'll be all over the place. But the point is that I'm trying to consolidate it a little bit and make it more interesting, so they have more things to do. But anyway, as I said, it's become more systemized for me for the regular sessions that I need, and then I do customized preparation for each class anyway. So essentially, I'm ready for anything that's thrown my way. I mean, you have to have a series of layers so that if something doesn't go the way you intended it to, you have a backup or a fail-safe that you can fall back to. But there's no such thing as a foolproof method. You can do everything right, and some customers will still fall by the wayside for whatever personal reason they might have. And you and I have discussed this before, right? Some clients are just like, they get distracted, I don't know what the story is, but they get distracted. There's nothing you can do about it at all. However, for the most part, if they're really, sometimes we get surprised, right? I thought one guy was like completely distracted, but he ended up renewing for like 6 months. You remember that one? That's kind of funny, because he likes talking to me, but at the same time, he's always busy doing his personal stuff. So he's constantly rescheduling. I'm like, are you serious about this or not? Kind of thing. But in the end, he ended up, renewing because he was still interested in the sessions that he had with me. That's all it is, really, more than anything else.
Hi, Steve. I know you got to go here, right? I wanted to just ask you another thing here. You're dealing with a lot of our GMs and just clients in high leadership positions. Like they have a lot of responsibility, and you've also started off in coaching, mid-level managers and even
I got a mixed bag. Yeah.
a mixed bag. What do you see in terms of now that you're dealing with these, GMs and leaders? What are you doing differently, or is there a different approach to how you're coaching these mid-level managers as opposed to these leaders? Because I want you to share, what you know with our other coaches that are dealing the same. They're teaching our CEOs, executives, and GMs. What can you share with them?
There's no universal approach, I think. However, if I was to take it at a kind of a high level, kind of bird's eye view of the thing, general managers feel alone and isolated, so they want to know how to manage their lower level or mid-level staff. That's their main area of concern. How do I motivate or manage people to do what I want them to do, right? That's basically what keeps them up at night every day. So that's something that you can focus on at that point, because they feel alone and isolated, so they have no one they can talk to their problems about except the coach, because the coach, he's not involved in the business, so there's no kind of like stigma attached to revealing everything they want to reveal, so long as you're very confidential about it. Now, as for mid-level staff, they like to complain about the boss, or they like to complain about the system. So it's a completely different approach, right? So you almost empathize with them about the difficult system or the difficult situation there, or how their bosses are bothering them. So it's kind of an opposite approach. Mm-hmm. So like, you empathize with their situation. Hey, I know, I've been through the same thing. So you're empathizing with the mid-level and I guess like junior level people, or even senior level to some extent, VPs. But with the CEOs, they're really already at the top. So essentially sometimes they're reporting to regions. So it's maybe dealing with regional and headquarters. And sometimes it's dealing with just managing their local staff. So they feel completely isolated from both corners. They don't know how to approach their regional people. They don't know how to approach their local people in some ways, or how to manage them properly, or how to motivate them properly, that kind of stuff.
Do you feel that you get into more of their functional roles with the higher ups a bit quicker than the mid-level ones?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, like with the general manager, you're forced to talk more about HR and about people management and about human psychology, because they'll say something like, I just don't understand why this person is like this. I'm like, well, I mean, let me hear what he's acting like. Can you give me an example? And then they tell me an example, and I say, well, he's acting that way. He might be thinking from this perspective. Have you thought about that? I've heard that a lot of employees, according to this psychology manual, think in this manner, for example. And that's why you need to do the studying, because you can't just sit there and like, I don't know, listen to them and just kind of make, kind of random casual comments.
So
right?
I completely understand. So we're talking about maybe GMs, clients that are dealing with, human resources and different, just really diverse business functions. Your preparation for them is not so much maybe just their line of business. It could be strategy, it could be innovation, maybe disruptive technology, things in HR, of that nature. Correct.
I'll even talk about, I've got finance people. I'll talk about, hey, I don't know how you're managing your finances. What are you projecting numbers? You have to do a little bit of studying. You can't just, so how are you doing your projections? Are you doing Q3 RF? I'll sympathize with them. Are you doing Q2, Q1? Are you preparing your, invoices for next month, or whatever the story might be? How did you do your closing? You have to know where their head's at, unfortunately, all the time. Otherwise, if you lose track of that, it's happened to me occasionally. I'm not, as I said, I'm not foolproof. I'm a human being. So on some classes, I will lose track of what the heck I was doing, and then I'll be stuck, right? But then I can find my footing, because I've been doing so much studying in the past. So I'll find a footing somewhere in the middle, and I can still get back to where I was. But if you haven't done any studying or any preparation, then once you're lost, you're lost. That's it. That's, you're done. There's no fallback position. There's no thing that you can go back to, right? You don't have any sort of default or fail safe, right?
And clients can see that right away, and when they do, that's pretty much a wrap. It's just pretty much at that point. So let's just finish the sessions that we have together, and or clients that are very proactive, they'll give us a call, or they'll email us and say, do you have a different recommendation?
And I just like to stress that it's not foolproof, but so far, at least for the last 4 months since I instituted this modular system with this kind of customized approach, I haven't had any complaints at all. So before that, I've had a few kind of issues here and there, but in the last 3 or 4 months, absolutely zero complaints from anybody. And in fact,
That's
the new
cool.
students are onboarded much easier because I already have a regular system in place.
That's cool. These five modulars, you said it has a video or an article, very short, script. And when you say script, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, videos will require scripts. For written articles, I record my own voice. So I make an audio recording, reading the whole
Really?
article. Yeah. So I actually give them something to listen to as well as reading, because I keep emphasizing that listening, reading, repeating is the key to learning.
Sure.
So if you do a little bit of that every day, 15, 20 minutes, that's fine. So I record my voice where there's no recording available for that article.
See, that's the coaches that are listening in would think how much time is going into preparing that.
It's
Seems like
actually not that much time. I mean, if you take a 2-page article, it would take you about, so long as you don't mess up in the middle of the audio article recording, and you have an editor or something. Like I've been using an audio editor, right? I was telling you about that a minute ago. It probably takes you about 5 to 6 minutes to read it carefully and properly for a 2-page article. So, I mean, 5 to 6 minutes, I'm sure you can spare that to record your voice, right?
okay.
5 to 6 minutes per article. Let's say you have 5 articles, just to take a random example, that's what, 30, 40 minutes, right? So just to make sure everything's correct, right?
And you do that on a Thursday or a Friday?
Yeah, actually the selection takes longer than the recording, because to select the right article or the right subjects, things that are interesting, kind of off the wall, a little bit different, maybe something that could be interesting for some people but not for everybody. You just pick a mixed bag of stuff, and then have them select what they find interesting. You'll be very surprised to find you'll find more about the people, how they select the programs, or what they look at, than when you just give them one article. Because if you just give them one article, they have no choice, right? So you don't really learn that much more about them. But if you give them a selection, you find out by what they're selecting, what they seem to like, or what they gravitate toward. For example, I did a movie clip from The Equalizer, and I found out, just because it was kind of an interesting kind of confrontational type of thing, and they used some metaphors. But what happened? Oh, I found out that one of the Samsung engineers really loved the movie. I didn't know that. The other way I could find out is because he watched that clip and he didn't watch anything else. I was like, okay, you should have looked at some other stuff. But it was just kind of funny, right? But you learn more about the client that way as well, right?
Good.
Okay.
I think that's awesome. Okay, I think we got to wrap it up here.
Yeah, I think I kept it pretty simple, hopefully. But as I said, there's no simple solution, and I think there's a lot of sub-elements that we just don't have the time to discuss. And each situation is slightly different. And if I actually had to do a diagnosis, I mean, if coaches want to tell me about a specific issue that they're running into with a specific client, I can actually do a quick diagnosis and figure out what's wrong as well. So it's up to them, whatever they want to do. And in fact, some customers are actually throwing me PowerPoint slides, throwing me like Word files to have them fix it for them. So I've reached the level of trust with some people that they're throwing me confidential information, really, for me to fix. So it's something that has been developed. I really sucked at it if I did it 10 years ago. I think I'm much better at it now. So it's a learning experience, as I said. But the point is that just like everything else, we have to evolve. We can't do the same thing all the time. Otherwise, we'll also be obsolete, especially with all the stuff that's coming down the pipeline in the educational industry, whether it's AI or whether it's something else. So what can you provide besides what AI can't provide, right? And it's all about creativity, customization, bonding with them at some level. And as you said, a little bit of consulting. You're not really consulting. You're really just making them think a little bit differently by themselves, and they have to come up with their own solutions. I actually tell them that, hey, look, you're the GM. In the end, you have to come up with your solution. I can just make some suggestions. You don't have to follow them, but I'm sure it might give you some insight on what to do, right? That's it.
Likewise. I mean, that's what I do as well. You plant that idea or seed and you make them believe it's theirs. It really is theirs, but it's just we're giving them different perspectives and different ways of thinking about it.
Yeah. I mean, they don't have to. As I said, they might think it's wrong, or they might not accept the advice. But that's not the issue. The point is that you're interested at all.
Yes. And
I mean, let me tell you, semiconductors can be quite boring. So I'm sorry to say, it's not that exciting a subject. Okay.
I've done my research into them, and it, puts me right to sleep. But look, I'm going to leave some highlights and just key points from our talk today. I think it's going to be very valuable for our coaches that are watching this. And so, Steve, I want to thank you so much for taking your time and sharing your incredible insight with us today. I'm sure we'll have more in the future.
Okay.
But I'm greatly appreciative of your endless service to our clients, and they're very lucky to have you.
Okay, thank you.
We are as well. So.
Yeah, as I said, I'm happy to share materials if you want me to share them. Not a problem. I use a lot of different tools available to me to acquire anything I can get my hands on. So just let me know. It's not like I'm hoarding it. I have no reason to hoard it. There's no advantage in my hoarding stuff. So feel free. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right. Have a good night. I've got to go to my next class is in 9 minutes, believe it or not.
Good night. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.